Remember the good old days when you could buy a video game and you didn't have to worry about spending real money to buy in-game currency to unlock like hidden items are within a game? Yeah, those were the good old days of the 80s and the 90s and the early 2000s, because technically I believe microtransactions got started somewhere like in the mid 2000s, like around '06. But a lot of people have been sick of microtransactions for years now, and Gran Turismo 7 is a game that basically received backlash for the most part because of its heavy use of microtransactions. And a lot of people look at that and think that Sony has not learned their lesson from Gran Turismo 6, but then at the same time, Gran Turismo 6, even though there was microtransactions included in that game, it wasn't as bad as what we got in GT7. Now, the game that came out before Gran Turismo 7 a couple of years ago, Gran Turismo Sport, didn't have any microtransactions, I don't think, and it was a game that a lot of people liked, and the game was massively successful. Like I talked about in my last video, it reached at least 8 million in terms of sales, allegedly. And a lot of people just like a game where they can just buy it, unlock stuff by completing certain tasks, missions, whatever, and if necessary, just download extra content through DLC. But that doesn't seem like that's the case anymore. And I'm not saying that like this is a big thing or an epidemic within like the gaming world, because I feel that microtransactions started to become more and more of a thing throughout the 2010s. And because of that, there's that idea that a lot of people are going to get turned off to video games in the future, especially as it relates to this decade, the 2020s decade, because video games is becoming more expensive. The price of gaming in general is becoming more expensive, with accessories and just like the economy being bad and prices going up because of inflation and all that stuff. And it's going to get to a point where a lot of people, I still feel that, millions of people are still going to buy games and video game consoles, but it's in terms of sales, it's not going to be what it was back in the 2000s. Now you look at the PlayStation 2, which came out back in the year 2000, that's probably the best-selling game system of all time, reached 155 million units sold worldwide within a decade. And then you look at how popular the Wii console was, reached over 101 million units sold worldwide. And I believe Nintendo DS was somewhere between the Wii and the PS2 in terms of sales and units shipped out and all that stuff. But the thing is, even though the PlayStation 4 was very popular back in the early teens, and throughout most of the decade, we didn't have to worry so much about microtransactions. And even if there were microtransactions back in the day, it wasn't as bad as what we saw with Gran Turismo 7. And this is something that I feel is going to negatively affect the sales of Gran Turismo 7 in the long run. Even though it hasn't been a year just yet, I doubt the game is going to end up selling more than Gran Turismo Sport, because a lot of people feel like Sony really shot themselves in the leg with the whole microtransaction thing. And honestly, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, are microtransactions ruining the gaming world? To some extent, but right now it's not so bad. It could be worse, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed and praying and hoping that does not get worse, because I feel like that's going to ruin gaming for a lot of people, especially those who are casuals. Imagine how longtime hardcore fans of the Gran Turismo series feel about what they saw in Gran Turismo 7. Now, a lot of people attribute this to video games being greedy and basically trying to force people to pay for something that is already on a disc that they purchased, which is true for the most part. But at the same time, things change, and companies are always going to look for new ways to make more money from their consumers and what have you, because that's just business, unfortunately.